Hello, this is Xander Davis. Welcome to the first of my film commentaries. We're doing Ghost in the Shell from 1995. I'm using the 25th anniversary edition Blu-ray, and we will start that soon. I will let you know when the sync point is. In the meantime, I just wanted to share my personal portfolio at xanderdavis.com, xanderdavis.com. And that's where I have my UI design work for video games, stuff that I've done in the AAA games industry, as well as freelancing for indies. And I've been freelancing for the last 4 years now worldwide, working on anything from small indie games to AAA funded games, and it's been awesome. And before that, I worked on site at studios, and that was a wild ride. I worked on Transformers War for Cybertron and Darksiders 2. I also worked on Lichdom for Xaviant and several titles for Petroglyph, including End of Nations and a few other titles that were in development at the time, notably Grey Goo. Since then I've been doing my own indie projects and all sorts of stuff. So, in tandem with freelancing. And it's been crazy. So it's kind of great to kind of return to, kind of YouTube especially. I used to have a show on YouTube briefly, and it's great to be back. So this is also kind of done in tandem with the launch of loremethod.com, which is a new writing portfolio of mine. And the debut title that I did was Neon Eclipse, and that is sort of my cyberpunk bucket where I, whenever I want to play in a cyberpunk universe, it's kind of my own custom universe, sort of reimagined, kind of cyberpunk future from all of the changes that we've kind of all witnessed, especially since the 2016 election. I think that sort of however, it went for you, I think it sort of really shook up everybody's perceptions of what the future is going to be. And it really was exciting from a sci-fi writing standpoint to examine, the new trajectories going out to imagine from now, what is 2046, really going to look like or whatever. So, and I'm especially curious that it seems just really kind of crazy and unpredictable now. So all of the cyberpunk tropes that we are used to seeing from everything from William Gibson's Neuromancer from the 80s, Blade Runner, all the way to Ghost in the Shell in 1995, I think a lot of these works have kind of been the foundation milestones, the sort of bedrock, at least in cinema and in fiction, of cyberpunk. And we've seen a lot of riffs on that. So I was really curious to, re-examine that from a post 2016 perspective. I had even written a screenplay that sort of predicted a lot of the craziness in terms of media and perception and propaganda that we saw in that last election, and it was specifically set in the 2016 election, and I wrote that in 2007. So that was called Voting Vertigo, which is a 5-star script at Amazon Studios now. So anyway, just to get to Ghost in the Shell, I was especially, really excited for the new movie, and I think this commentary will be really curious, kind of a curious examination of the movie, the new movie, and how that contrasts against the old. Which, frankly, I consider, spoiler alert, I consider the old movie, the 1995 movie, still the best Ghost in the Shell movie ever made, and the best iteration and version of the franchise, the IP, that's ever come about. So they've reinvented it a few times. They even have, the Japanese, even did this new Ghost in the Shell, the new movie, a reboot, at the same time as the 2017 live action movie with Scarlett Johansson, Rupert Sanders directing. And it was kind of, redo of the Ghost in the Shell Arise, and so there's a long legacy to Ghost in the Shell, and it's really crazy. But I think that it's sort of it started in the manga being a little more whimsical and cartoony, and it Oshii, who's the director of the '95 film that we're about to watch, I think he took it into a much more serious tone. I think he sort of used it as a vehicle to examine far more serious ideas. And so it's a much darker, sobering look at the future. And in the context of when it came out in the mid '90s, on the way to the millennium, as the internet's coming about, and I think it was sort of perhaps misinterpreted. Its ending, especially, was perhaps misinterpreted as a more optimistic view of the future, of where we're all headed as a human species. And I think, in hindsight now, especially looking back on it, and where we are today in our sort of media-dazed world that we're in, I think it was, pretty clear now that it's about transhumanism on the road to posthumanism, and it's a very dystopic view. So we will get into all of that as we go, and that all of that sort of ties into my it was a huge influence to me, and ties into when I created Neon Eclipse and launched it in early January 2017. Kind of realizing a lot of the glossy cyberpunk things that we've come to kind of know and love, and are kind of wanting to see happen in real life. I think they maybe not. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's kind of too late. Maybe it's something we really don't want. It's not cyberpunk anymore. It's more like cyber fucked. Is kind of what I call it. So, and so anyway, it's let's just dive right in and get to it. So I'm gonna hit play here on the DVD main menu, or the Blu-ray main menu, and we will go. So I'm gonna hit play in 3, 2, 1. All right, we're off. In the not-so-distant future, when the corporate networks fill the earth with electronic and optical communication lines, but society has not yet been too computerized to erase nations and races. Wow. So, globalism was a huge issue, I think, in the 2016 election, and now in the Trump presidency. It's nationalism versus globalism worldwide. You've got Brexit. You've got the problems with the EU. You had Marine Le Pen, and you had the shock election of Trump. And I think there's a real sort of underrepresented notion of nationalism, and then there's a hugely publicized push towards globalization, which isn't perhaps working out too well. We may have been using the early 21st century as a beta test here, and I can't say it's been working out too great, but on the other side of the coin, there are amazing things about the way the internet has worked that has been fantastic. And so it's, like anything, it's a double-edged sword, and it's sort of contingent on who's wielding it, I think. So that's it's very interesting that super prophetic that here in 95, Oshii, and really production was in 94, so it's, early 90s technically, that they were, thinking about this stuff and putting it in this context, in this dark future. And of course, it doesn't hurt to have an anime girl who's got a naked robot body, as we just saw there. It's, and I love Bato's 80s jacket here. It's just fantastic. And when I was a kid, so I watched this when I was a teenager, and for the first time in the 90s. I think I was in high school, maybe a freshman. I don't really know. But whenever I watched it, you're in the 90s. This is the age of Johnny Mnemonic, the film with Keanu Reeves. This is pre-Matrix. So to see, a cartoon that was essentially, a cartoon. That's how Americans think of it. It's a cartoon. Anime was still rare back then, and hard to get. And to think of this film being drawn, and so, or you could think of it as a cartoon that's drawn like a film. Watching this as a kid, it just blew my mind, and that's been something that's really fascinated me. It's sort of this ability to be a filmmaker on a fraction of the budget, if you're willing to put that kind of work in, and that's some really hard work. So, the when you think of it in those terms, the artistry that's going on in every shot here, how shots are composed, like this fish tank going on, and then where that ends up going, and we've got two men in suits talking about diplomatic immunity, and it's for a quote unquote cartoon, and for a teenager to watch this is definitely making an impression here. This is like, whoa, what is this? And here we go with the exploding head. Bam. yeah. So that'll get your attention. So yeah, I mean, I may, as I talk about my points here, I may be rambling and wavering as we, encounter different things. It's kind of the fun of doing it to a commentary track. Yeah, and that thermoptic camouflage effect, I watched the behind the scenes on the original DVD, and that was like a huge thing that they did that, and now we're in this time of watching we almost take CG for granted and kind of roll our eyes even at how much it's overused. So special effects back then are so much more difficult, and today it's so much more accessible and simple and straightforward, and what you can do with it is incredible. This opening sequence is so iconic and so arresting. I just watched this with my wife before we saw the 2017 Rupert Sanders film, and by the way, when we did see it in the theater, she leaned over and thanked me. She was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you showed me the original, because now I can actually see what's going on and kind of appreciate it a little more." So that was, it sort of enhanced her experience in the theater. And I think for maybe the general movie-going audience who didn't have that background, of course, it wouldn't resonate as well. Maybe fall a little bit more flat. But this intro sequence is amazing. It's super iconic. And yeah, it's a naked woman, but you're not really thinking about any of that. You're thinking about this. I mean, the cinematography and the shot design, what they're kind of doing here is so just kind of beautiful, especially to the music. And that soundtrack is just incredible. And the fact that they didn't use this title song in the 2017 adaptation, I just baffles me to no end. And they even screened it with it, so I know that there was a cut with it. But yeah, I mean, it makes the movie. It's a statement. It's right here. It's a punch in the face. It's saying, yeah, buckle up, because this is not your typical sci-fi movie, and this is a serious sci-fi movie. This is going to challenge you. This is not a Me Too of Blade Runner. This is something unique. Kenji Kawai. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, like, and how they did this, they ran this, all the staff's names through an algorithm to get those numbers. It's just like, it was probably a little excessive. I don't think anybody's decrypting the title sequence in their spare time, but who knows? But that just shows you how much thought they put into everything, which is kind of indicative of why this is such a legend. It's just, it really is kind of the thing that really proves it, that they went all in on this. I love that shot of her. To me, I always thought, especially right there, she looks very European, and I think Ripley was a huge influence on this character, as she was for almost every female sci-fi character since 1979's Alien, and especially since Aliens. And I believe, yeah, I'm pretty sure the manga for Ghost in the Shell was created in the 80s, so, it was kind of a robot Ripley, basically. And here she looks a lot more Japanese, I think. So it's funny that there was, a lot of controversy in the new film about whitewashing. I don't get the sense from this film that it's a specifically Japanese film. I think Akira is a Japanese story, sort of uniquely Japanese in that way, but I think it could easily be molded into a more international, post-globalism type of a story, and that's sort of what the approach they took in the new movie. But in terms of this, Oshii changed the setting to what appears to be Hong Kong. I don't know if they ever specifically say that. I mean, it's you're dealing with all these political bureaus that, in the new series, they're definitely in some sort of like Japanese, a new city in Japan or something after some sort of calamity. But yeah, here it clearly looks like Hong Kong. So I don't know if he's implying that Japan eventually takes over China, or if it's the other way around, or if the future of the world is Chinese, which is sort of a current globalism sentiment. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. And again, sort of, especially in our time now, it sort of makes this a lot more prescient. I don't know if it was just a good guess or if it was the paranoia of the Japanese and their sort of long-standing adversarial position with China and back and forth. Or maybe just seeing the writing on the wall even in the 90s and seeing where globalization was going, especially in tandem with cyberization. It's kind of interesting. So this scene was the sort of unnecessarily complex exposition scene down an elevator, which is easier for them to draw, and I don't fault them for that. They've got more important things to draw. So I love this set right here. This is such a weird set for this. I mean, she's like being operated on, but it's not an operating theater. It's like some quasi Art Deco futuristic hotel ballroom that's empty or something. It's kind of these super high ceilings and walls, and I love the design of all of that. That Cyberbrain debugging kit, apparently, or did they actually pull out her brain? It's kind of unclear. Is that her brain? And yeah, the yellow jacket. It's kind of very similar to Bateau's. A little more sleek and compared to his, which is super bulky. But yeah, I love it. Look at that design. And just, yeah, so, you think about that, like, especially in the 90s, and especially with how everything was drawn, everything is a choice. It's not like they just had the props and put the camera somewhere and shot it. Like, this all came purely out of their heads. It's a lot more magical when you think of it in those terms, especially for how filmic it is. Here's another expository scene. I love that iconic vest that she's got. I saw some concept art that Mache did that had, for the new movie, that he did a rendition of that vest and everything, and I so wish they would have used it. It was great. And, I love Togas's mullet. It's fantastic. And so, yeah, I think I started to get on this point, but then things were happening and I shifted to that. But yes, watching this as a kid, a teen in the 90s, there was a weird, like, why are they doing the 80s? It's funny that, like, I remember in the 90s, bell bottoms came back, and in the 2000s, it was kind of like the early 2000s was kind of not specific retro, but then, like, once we got into the mid 2000s onward, we've been in this 80s mode, ever since. We're all totally fascinated by the 80s. I think it's gone on longer than the typical cycle, which has been about 10 years. It makes sense because you have people that grew up in that time. By the time they're in their 30s and they're in positions of management and direction, they're sort of revisiting their nostalgia, and they're in positions of production and all of that. So it seems like about, it's like a 20-year cycle or something, or a 10, it lasts for 10 years and then we're on to the next thing. But we're kind of at the end of history with, the 90s being kind of the last thing. And then we kind of began heavily recycling the 80s. And now are we going to I've seen it start. We're heavily recycling the 90s. But then where does it go from there? So, I think it's just this cacophony now of style. It's total chaos, styles from everything and everywhere. I think the internet is this huge archive that allows us to do that now. So we can pull from anything. 1920s have come back in a big way since 2012. I think Boardwalk Empire had a huge part to play in that. But also, possibly economic struggles. It's kind of relevant with a sort of post-crash aesthetic. Anyway, I love the fact too that they kind of spend time on these garbage men here. That's and we're like in the thick of the city. We really see the city, and in terms of the city as a character. By the way, this guy, the garbage man here, I thought for the new movie they should have had Keanu Reeves play him. That would have been a wonderfully they sort of share the similar features, and that would have been just a wonderfully meta thing. As I call him, reality confused specialist Keanu Reeves. That would have been fantastic. It's perfect for the character itself. It's cyberpunk meta. He's been in, obviously The Matrix and Johnny Mnemonic and William Gibson's, who screenwrote that and all of that. So. And I love Bato's car here and this boxy. So that was the one thing. The car there was the one thing where I was just like, why 80s with all of this stuff? But the car is pretty cool. Those jackets I hated. And even as I was watching it back then, I was even like imagining he wasn't wearing that jacket. But now I totally dig all of this sort of neo 80s stuff. So again, like, Ghost in the Shell just kind of super prescient here. And then we've got like Barney Fife living in downtown Hong Kong with his garbage. It's very strange. The voice actor for this was an interesting choice. And now we're finally off to the races. This is where things finally pick up. And, really, it's just I would say it's a very good it's refreshing, this sort of pacing. Like now we've got such a formula that we're so into our formulas now, that this really takes you along for a ride in a different way, and I think it really treats you like an adult, especially for 94, 95. Yeah. She's texting while driving. That's really what's going on there. Not looking at the road. This always, I've noticed there's this similarity with, having the director and his subordinates at computer terminals. It reminds me of Neon Genesis too. I don't know which is referencing, but yeah. Yeah, and you're really like, why are they talking about his dog and his girl? Actually, that was correct. He is talking about his dog, but he's talking about his daughter here. And why are we, who are these people and what? But that's kind of gets those questions going. And now watching it, knowing what's happened to him, that he's ghost hacked and everything, it's funny how after seeing this so many times, things like that don't really occur to me at all. Is a puzzle, that makes total sense. Even back then, I didn't really like these graphics, but now I kind of like them. They're a little more analog, sort of like the 1979 Alien, and that's got a charm to it. It's got a sort of neo 80s charm to it. And yeah. These environments are just gorgeous. Okay, so I think I got off on this, but the city as a character, this really shows you future dystopia. Everything's built on top of itself, and it's all kind of dirty and gray. And in the new movie, everything was really kind of more like the new series, where it was all sleek and even appealing. All of those holograms and things they didn't make me claustrophobic. We're so used to video games now. It just all kind of looked appealing and kind of normal, and I think expected. I think that's what it will be. But for a metaphor of the future, I think it needed to go way further than it did. And honestly, I think it needed to go back to what this was, just on overdrive, a little more holography, but still the same sort of grimy, built on top of itself, Hong Kong city. You could imagine, some vast economic recession hitting the future, and especially with population booms, I think it was 2000. I wrote a song to this scene in the first original album that I produced under the name Spartacus, and the album was called Omni. And later I rebranded the album as Phoenix, Phenex. But yeah, there we go. I can see Trinity there. Yeah, the Wachowskis showed the producer Joel Silver this film and said, we want to do that for real. And so you can see a lot of influence all over the place in here. And this is just such an amazing, look how detailed everything is, this market scene, and how effective they are at giving you this sense of total vastness. For as big as this scene is, that's really impressive. I think he drops an F-bomb here. And, when you're a teen watching a cartoon that has an F-bomb in it, you're like, yes, I don't know what this is, but this is awesome. I think this movie ages like wine. It's just going to get more and more well regarded because you can really appreciate how special it is for its time, but also in contrast to everything that we have now. Like, they don't even make anime movies like this anymore. Like, I don't know why not, This is a film. And everything that we see still from anime is a lot more cartoony, and frankly, a lot of it's nonsensical. But this, if Disney was into cyberpunk, this is what we would have gotten, like. Like, this is about as filmic and grounded in Hollywood principles without the bad of Hollywood, and it has kind of an art film vibe to it at the same time a little bit. Yeah, he passes that fallen trolley there in the middle of an alley or something. Like, it just is all of the junk everywhere. It's just delightful, and not Neuromancer, not Blade Runner. It's this very uniquely Hong Kong. It's funny too because, like, Neuromancer and Runner were all very Tokyo influenced, and I think the new anime is very Tokyo influenced. But this is what a choice by Oshii, you know. And this scene is super classic and just, you know, what a weird scene for a fight. Like, what is this? Like, yeah, some like sanitation pool surrounded by ads, in case you're wandering around. These mega apartments, and I don't know what's happening to his legs there. It almost looks like his pelvis was being twisted around. Very cool. I love the VR headset that she has here, or I guess it would be an augmented reality headset. It's very similar to kind of how they ended up turning out. These pinpoint cameras all over them. And motion tracker things, you know, that's kind of how they are now. But in an AR sense, I would imagine they're cameras and probably different stereoscopic, you know, thermal and infrared and all that. I did think it was a good merging in the movie of this character and the Garbage Man. I think that was great. And the fact that his whole personality would completely switch into a combatant, you know, a trained guy with guns, and even be somewhat robotic. I thought that was great. Clever streamlining. You know, it wasn't required, but I enjoyed it. I thought that was good. This is another weird scene where I don't know if they're referencing the manga or something or what, and that's a super 80s outfit. It's like, that's definitely late 80s, early 90s, but, and another mullet with a mustache. Love it. But yeah, this character here, I mean, it's just kind of like it really just imbues the plot with a creep factor going on. Like, this guy turns out to be nothing. And it's not really, I still haven't really wrapped my head around what's going on in this, but there's nothing quite like, you know, especially in Japanese stuff, like a white-haired man who looks super devilish walking slowly in a trench coat. You know, that's there is a lot of, the one thing I would fault this film for is just there's a lot of word vomit. There's a lot of expository scenes that kind of tell and don't show, and a lot of the stuff they get into is very bureaucratic, but at the same time that sort of shows you how complex their world is, and I think it actually accurately reflects how complex our world is, and how we can't just do simple things, that there's layers and layers of bureaucracy and compromise within various departments, and that they don't even trust each other, and they're sometimes working against each other. And here's Keanu Reeves again. Togus is nice. He's nice to him. It's all right, pal. You've been hacked. You know, Elon Musk is he's got a new company, Neuralink, and he wants to create a neural lace, a brain to machine interface, and plug us into the internet. No thanks. Especially considering the WannaCry virus that just hit the world. You know, it's been pretty much proven that we have failed to secure virtually everything between the NSA and the CIA's secret NSA that they built and then lost all of their cyber weapons on. That's Fault 7, WikiLeaks, all that stuff. So, yeah, no. Well, thank you very much. I'll keep my brain to myself. That being said, I'm sure that a lot of people will jump at that. And, you know, it's going to be scary when a lot of people, or maybe a majority of people, are their brains are connected to the internet. So good luck with that. This shot right here is what rang in my mind when I saw Scarlett Johansson in Under the Skin. She had a similar angled shot with almost the exact same expression. And I think that was 2014 when I saw that, when it came out for home video, and ordered it online and on demand. And I called it right there. I went on Twitter and I was like, yeah, Scarlett Johansson should play Major. And the first press photo that they released was that exact shot of her, which I'm not sure was in the movie. This shot too is really cool, and just this whole moment. And I love the acoustic guitar and this sort of this whole riff here really reminds me of something that I think I've heard in a Final Fantasy game, or maybe Lost Odyssey or something. Just, I guess I don't know if that's a uniquely Japanese approach to using the acoustic guitar and kind of the way it's used with everything else, but I've heard it in multiple Japanese projects like that, and I love it. I think it's beautiful. And I love this sort of like moment with her where she is not really human, is she? She's got barely, it's just her ghost, right, at this point. So they really sort of alienate us from her and her from us too, which serves the story and serves her character, and it's fantastic. This shot right here where she, boom, that, oh man. And at the same time, while they're alienating us, they're using moments like that to get us to, kind of fall in love with her. And that's exactly what Bateau's doing. And so we're sort of syncing up with his perspective. Poor Bateau. This is a nice reprieve, a nice little break. It's kind of fun to hang out with them, after work. Voice acting there was a little hard. Yeah, there's some times where she's pretty flat, but also Kusanagi is pretty flat in this movie. And she's sort of robotic, and so I don't know if that was the voice actress trying for something there. It's a scary thought that eventually they'll get to the point where you could replace your whole body, a prosthetic body. Considering how many times we have to buy iPhones every 2 years or so, I wouldn't want to have to rebuy, something as mundane as my kneecaps every 2 years because there's a better kneecap that comes out. Like that could really get tedious. But I could, that's something I might play with in Neon Eclipse, where that could be the point of how insanely tedious everything has become. Here we get into the philosophy big time, and I think it's really what makes this, and not just the dialogue that she's saying, but there's the philosophy of the movie is here, and it's in everything else, all the way back to the beginning. The tone, the Oshi's own unique tone that he took with Ghost in the Shell versus the manga, which the new TV series, went sort of back to the spirit of the manga, I think. So Rupert Sanders is quoted as saying that he thought the original was too philosophical, and his version has like a 45% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, I mean, I don't know why you would, why would you discard things that are so core to why we're watching this over 25 years later, like, unfortunately, I think it's like they hired a director who could just as easily have made an Audi commercial. So he's a professional in that sense. And here we go again into the city, and really into the city this time, and furthermore into her own alienation, lonely in a crowd, small against the monolith of the city, monoliths, everywhere. This, amazingly fantastic boat city scene. Like, it's like Venice in hell. A future hell of Venice. And yeah, right there, is she just seeing herself in someone else, or is her megatech body mass produced? And then what does that mean for her identity? So and this look right here, bam, she's freaking out, she's really starting to question things, and the puppet master may already be manipulating her. This whole thing might be all to draw her towards him, and that may involve a psyop, and to prepare her for what he's planning. And yeah, I just love this. There's the dog again, which sort of becomes a symbol of unreality, especially in the sequel. Oh, there she is in a storefront, modeling clothes as a mannequin. Look at that. That's gorgeous. So good. Maybe they went to Hong Kong and took reference photos and then created paintings over it, but whatever. I mean, they have an eye. Oh, she certainly captured something, bringing a whole unique flavor to this. Yeah, I just don't know in 2017 if a movie with this tone could be made unless it was made by like Christopher Nolan. And that's actually who I think, it's the first one that comes to mind, either him or Fincher, to be able to pull this off for a mass market from Hollywood in 2017. Anybody else, it was probably doomed, because you go to the theater and you don't go expecting a Fincher film or a Nolan film. You're basically not expecting anything. What are you expecting? It's ScarJo, so she did Marvel movies. So is this a Marvel movie with sci-fi paint? I mean, I almost think that's what they thought. That'll work. They don't need the philosophy. They don't. Right there, that shot is so iconic of what this movie represents. A sleek future of soulless golems as commodity, I love these beam lights over the highway. That's so cool. And so, like, when I was a kid and I was I had some like how to draw anime books and stuff, and they had a certain way of drawing girls, and they had different, much more varied ways of drawing men. And so when I first saw this, I thought, well, okay, is that just how they draw girls? They kind of all look the same? Because I don't know. But you pretty quickly pick up that, no, that's a Kusanagi body with blonde hair. And in the standalone complex, they sort of hint that she's at least bisexual. And here we have that again, and I don't know which came first, if this was if they got that idea from that, if it came from the manga, I don't know. I love that fingerprint pattern. It just totally to me looks like if you're being like interfaced with a computer, that yeah, your vision and everything would kind of reduce into like sine waves and stuff, and just like waveforms, electronic harsh. It was it's a small little detail, but it's just like when I saw that, and every time I see that, I'm like, yes, that totally is what that would feel like. Sort of a vibratory, signal pattern going directly to the brain. A lot of exposition here. This could all play very differently if it was, in live action. I mean, you'd have much more variance in their expressions, but this sort of stoicism that we get out of an anime rendition of this three character exchange is, one shot locked right there, and it's just them and their jaws are moving, and that's it. I love this too. This lighting on him is just super awesome. Very cyberpunk. Whenever you want something to be cool, light it down up. And yeah, this is cool. This whole notion that it looks like it's got a ghost, but there's no original, which means that Project 2501, the Puppet Master, has emulated humanity, and maybe that was just like a wasn't even hard for him to do. That's how advanced he is. So, with the singularity being touted as this thing that's going to save us, considering, what's going on in trends of cybersecurity, I would say no, it's not. It's pretty super naive that it's going to save us. It's going to save a few. The very few. But no, it's not. It's going to leave a lot of us behind. And it's going to really disrupt and screw up a lot of things. And in this film, it's screwing up humanity as a concept. Gotta love these shots where just the mouth moves and it's this cat-like gaze that she has. Very robotic, so it actually works conceptually. By the way, Aramaki Beat Takeshi playing Aramaki, it didn't quite match, but it's just like from an American audience standpoint, I can't think of any other actor with more legend, and he was also in Johnny Mnemonic, so it sort of is a little meta there too. But people like him, and you need to like Aramaki. That's a good casting call, I think. Hmm. But Aramaki was never a badass, and that's also kind of what Beat Takeshi brings to the role. I'm not exactly complaining on that. He's sort of like an Einstein in this sort of, in terms of his archetypal design here. Yeah, this gets really bureaucratic and talky and um, diagrammy. Like, it's just like, when my wife is sitting here, I know that this is all just like washing over her, and only after several viewings that I'm like even following it. And it's weird because it's when once I understood it, it's like, oh well, it's not that complicated. But it's just, I think it's the way it's all conveyed. It's told, not shown, and in a visual medium, it would been much better if they were able to convey these bureaucratic concepts a little more visually. So yeah, by this point in the story, Kusanagi is really questioning her identity and even wondering if she's human. There are some consistencies, that aren't just superficial with the 27 film. And a lot of the ways that they combined other aspects were very clever. But ultimately, it just fell flat, especially at the end. When I do the 2017 Ghost in the Shell commentary, I'll get all into that. I'm going to try to keep this more as a celebration of the 95 film. This is probably the worst scene in the movie. It's just... Let's do math with pressure plates, and let's play back video of doors closing that don't even appear to be closing weirdly. Like, we'll see here that the way that they close even seems like an appropriate amount of time following the last person through. That looks like any supermarket, grocery store time interval from the motion sensor, from the last guy to walk through. It's really a stretch that from this, he's inferring that people in thermoptic camouflage are sneaking through. It had to hold for like 5 seconds for that to, and that's maybe a more like focus tested approach to it. Like, to really nail this, drive this home, let's exaggerate that a little bit, but they're not exaggerating it at all. It doesn't look unusual at all. And like, he's really just kind of, from that, he gets the idea for the pressure plates, and then he's right, but I don't buy it. And it was totally unnecessary to like do the doors at that time interval anyway, where it's so close, because we didn't like really see that shot in another context. That was a different door, so it's not like they had to sneak that by us initially, and then he would think about that later, and they'd replay that security feed, and and then we go back and watch it a second time, and they're right, that lines up, no, it's like just totally arbitrary, and that's just a bad writing and bad directing, really, because you got to lay down cards and turn them over, especially if you're solving a mystery. You can't. It's a bit Deus Ex Machina going on. But he's got his trusty revolver, and that's so his character. And Aramaki in the 2017 film should not have had a revolver. What are they doing? All right. And here we go. This is a pretty iconic Japanese sci-fi image. I've seen this in video games since, the regular Nintendo. I've seen this in new games. And you gotta love that. So, this is ridiculous, but this is a great example of good filmmaking, because it's so striking, it's so iconic, and the way his hands go out like that. Honestly, he would just neurolace into the system and go at 500 times that speed. That's how it really would go. But when you're making a film and you want to convey these visually, that totally makes more sense to do that. And it's a great thought that they had to have that thought. They had to maybe not go directly to what it would be, and maybe stop and think, well, what would be a really cool moment here? And so there's nothing quite like having intense philosophical discussions come out of a male voice and a female robot body that has her legs and bottom half completely ripped off and her arms ripped off, and she's all hooked into great mechanical design and looks identical to Kusanagi with a different haircut. I mean, wonderful. What an awesome shot. There's a shot here. I think they got this idea from Ridley Scott in 1979 Alien to shoot a video playback, but that right there looks awful. Looks totally awful. Oh no. But other than that, so maybe those two are the worst shots in the film. But and Togusa with the pressure plates is the worst scene in the film. So we got the worst out of the way. It's just uphill from here. And here we go. I love, especially I'm watching the American dub version. I kind of always have, and I love the voice for this character. That voice actor just crushed it. I really like how meticulous and particular he is with his enunciation. It's just like a very Machiavellian math professor or something, you know. It's and yet he's totally an evil lord at the same time. There's a lot going on there, and it's fantastic. It's really easy to think that that's not Kusanagi's body with that haircut and the different color. But yeah, that's it. More exposition with nothing moving. Not even, a tiny little mouth animation. That's funny. This is great though. I mean, it's just so creep factor. This little biomechanical looking intestine, it's kind of what it's implied there. It's not really that, but great mechanical design on this. Yeah, this is a cool idea too, that it's not AI, that I mean, again, I think kind of also ahead of its time, like it's an emergent sentience. Maybe you could say Neuromancer Wintermute was that, but that had to be made. The fact that this just emerged out of the internet is really cool. That's a cool shot. Bam. I love this too. The rain and the splashes and the car design and that red backlight. And it's a little weird. Togus is just here. Why is he there? How did he figure that out? That's where they are. I guess he maybe saw the car, figured out the car was there. Well, whatever. Love the back there. Smack. And yeah, they just have this all rigged up with the. That's some pretty Deus Ex Machina stuff going on, but whatever. I buy it. He figured it out, so he had time to plan. But that's I don't know where he found a garbage man or an agent to pose as a garbage man. Coordinate all that, but. All right, he's moving in. Aramaki is pissed. More bureaucracy, and it's like there's a third of the movie that needed to be shot that would have set this up a little bit, well, drawn, I guess, but um I don't know. It just seems like instead of just explaining all of this and really technical kind of, well, Section 6 uses this thermoptic camouflage and they're the only other ones. And I don't know. I think today, especially for a live action adaptation, there would have been maybe a good 20 minutes of seeing Section 6 at first as a collaborator and then kind of smarmy and then maybe double crossing and then, builds up a little more. I think would have conveyed this a little more easily. Aramaki looks really weird in that shot. And yeah, she's not even looking at the screen really. Her eye line is going right over that screen, but you sort of figure out that she's wired in and maybe not even human. I love this tunnel. And how this engineer guy, he's like, I don't know. Maybe he has a girlfriend. Well, he called it. He was right. And it's almost funny because it's, especially now, like now that in 2017, how things are just so kind of unreal because of cyberization and digital everything and just kind of so much of it too. It's almost like at this point, nothing would surprise me. And so it's funny, like watching it now, it's kind of taking on a new context where I totally get what he's saying. And, in 95, I don't know, that line always felt a little weird for me. Like I liked it, but it was like, how did he get to that? But now it's like, oh yeah, of course. Maybe he does have a girlfriend because of course. Because everything is so crazy and upside down. And I've seen so much and lived through so much that nothing surprises me anymore. And this music cue too. It's not the typical action scene music. It could have been. This could have been a big marching military dun, 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 like, and it totally not. It's this lonely, like Mexican sounding guitar, riff. It's, oh, I love that. Man, that was so crazy. Like that was like a 2-second shot, right? And it was so striking and arresting, and they also kind of prepared us for that too, so we would even know what we're really looking at because it's kind of complicated. But man, and then when you see that, it's like a little reveal of, oh yeah, these women are like maybe not even women, or they're just so augmented. But yeah, just this music is like, it's so lonely and desolate and just great. And here we go with Ishikawa in his sweater and his beard, his scruffy. Is he in a van? I don't know. But I love that he's surfing the internet with this head brace, and he's got to lean head first into into the internet. It's it's so fantastic and I think a very 90s sentiment. Especially coming off of like seeing Hackers or something. And this is kind of funny too. Like, we're right back to the teaser, which is usually kind of a throwaway scene, especially in like the Bond formula and stuff. But no, he's like central to piecing this together. And frankly, I think the audience completely forgot all about him, which is why Ishikawa has to say, remember him. So it's sort of like, this probably would have been cut, in Hollywood. Like, or they'd have to just involve the defector in a more direct way in the end. I almost thought that he was the one who's standing by the white car by the spider tank shooting the submachine gun. I'm gonna have to look again. I don't know. I don't think that's him. Yeah, but let me get out a diagram, especially as I'm for me, and then as I'm trying to show this to my wife, but she was into it the whole time. That's why I married her. No. But yeah, it's just a lot of bureaucracy and talk and drawing straws, telling, not showing, and yes, into the internet. It's very memorable, though. They had, I don't know if they just felt like they had to give Ishikawa a scene, you know, because they couldn't fit him in anywhere else. I really love the violence in this, and it's something that we really don't get in movies anymore, because every movie has to be PG-13 to reach a broadest audience. You know, Ridley Scott's had the balls to go R with Alien Covenant, which I'm about to see and I'll do a commentary of soon. But and even Prometheus, I didn't think was that gory, but you know, but the level of violence that we do get here, it's very gory, but it's very brief, and it's a punctuation. It's not gratuitous. And to that end, I think it's way more shocking and makes a statement way more. I love this sniper rifle with a little robot face on it, but it's fantastic. These things are cool. And this whole video screen interior is amazing. And it's such a moment. Is that the Tesla logo right there at the back? I'll have to look that up. When, you know, he gets shot and, man, static everywhere. That's so cool. Such a shock. It's a future shock, you know? It's like, yeah, of course. And it's so subtle. Like, I love that. I love how, especially in anime, this serious and like this, it's very artistic. There's a lot of great ideas in the design of everything, and they just kind of throw it away. These shots just go really quick, and they really surprise you, and then they move on really fast. And I think that really keeps you like, just like, oh yeah, kind of salivating for what's going to happen next, you know? Really piques your interest, and it kind of makes you keep watching too, because you might miss the next thing because it goes so fast. Interesting little editing tactics maybe, or something, you know. And here we go to the end. The battle at the cathedral. This sort of and there's those eyes. I don't know if they explain this. I'm listening with the sound down here, but what is this? Like some museum? It's got fish, and it's on the, like a dock or some sort of boardwalk or something, but it's got like this whole thing about evolution inside. An aquarium, but it has like Homo sapien in there, and in the tree that they show might just be like some sort of zoo or something. And so yeah, this is all super duper Matrix, or I should say the Matrix is, the lobby scene is very much this. How these columns are reduced to apple cores, and you know, but the Wachowskis took it totally in their own direction, and I think it works fine. You know, I don't feel like they stole really. I think they were really like truly fans of this, and they wanted to see this, you know, realized. So it sort of feels like they were paying tribute to it in a way, or just they were excited, and you kind of pick up on that. This spider tank design is so cool. And I saw some alternate concepts that were done for the 2017 film, and they started with a pretty much straight up replica of this, and then they morphed it into different things. And the one they picked ultimately, I think, is less iconic. It's very, very functional, but it's... Oh, and I love this headset too that they've got right there, and hers as well. I saw concepts of that headset, and then they kept pushing it, and it looked less and less. You know, the sort of minimalism that is going on here with things, like even the sci-fi minimalism going on. It's so much more effective, I think, than coating everything in sci-fi candy paint. It's just, you take it so much more seriously. So I would have, again, just stuck with the original. And yeah, this spider tank has sort of like a Volkswagen Beetle face. But that's what kind of gives it that personality a little more. So it seems more like a little, like a character, not a tank. And you may even wonder, like, is this an AI powered robot she's fighting? She's not even fighting a tank, it's a robot. I totally missed looking for that guy with a submachine gun. I think she blew him away with a grenade. Yeah, these fossils in the wall. It's like a zoo or something. Abandoned. Really great, too, how these guns feel real. They feel functional, and that she does have limited ammo, and that gives some credence that the tank would have limited ammo. That shot right there where it fades up, I always thought that was a mistake with my DVD transfer that I bought. Like, did they mean to do that, or I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think I watched this on VHS at first, but maybe I did. So yeah, maybe I was like, is that a VHS like tracking thing? It just seemed like a mistake. Um, this kind of gives away her hiding behind columns. The fact that it can see through them in that shot kind of betrays that. Why isn't it just blasting the columns in? Limited ammo, maybe. And there we go. That shot right there defines the movie. And it is so integral to this. Or integral. You know, just... There, that guy. Is that... That's not the defector guy. No. Okay. I never thought it was. I just was like, why are they bringing up this guy just for Ishikawa's expository scene? Yeah, they're blown away by the grenade. And here we go. Super iconic moment. Just fantastic. Just beautiful. And this, honestly, this meant so much more in the Sanders film when they merged Project 2501 with Kuze, and she was saving her boyfriend in this moment, and she was, you know, she was the hero saving the boyfriend in this moment. And here she sort of fails right there, which is gorgeous. But, and I love that it was Kuze who gets his face squeezed instead of her right here. And then it's Bato that saves the day, you know. So if you're gonna have any sort of feminist tendencies on, you know, looking at this character, I agree with the changes they made, where Bato didn't come in and save the day. It was her that took out the tank, and she was saving her boyfriend who was helpless. And but we can get into more of all of that in the Sanders commentary. It's a beautiful crescendo, though, but seeing it in the new movie, it's sort of not ruined this for me in this one, but it was just like, oh yeah, no, that actually was one of the few things that was better and made more sense thematically and narratively. And it never really made sense, and it was kind of always a letdown to me that she kind of breaks, and then Bateau comes in at the last minute with this ridiculously big gun. You know, whatever. Okay, and that's really cool. I love this red cockpit with everybody strapped into VR, AR. Love these bulky helmets with huge cables coming out. This is so intense. And yeah, they're like, it's like a biomechanical sinking, which makes sense for sniping. I don't know where they were going. I guess they lured her to a trap. I never even really thought of that. As many times as I saw this, I was like, yeah, why did they come here? But yeah, it was a trap. It's to get her. But then again, there's easier ways to get her, so I don't. Once you start picking this apart, it can kind of unravel a bit, but it's always when the bad guy has a plan to lure somebody, then if you start looking at it that way, it can really kind of be picked apart as improbable. As improbable as Togasa in the alley with the garbage man ready to go. So, okay, here we go. We're going to get into the big stuff here. So, now he's inside, which is a not so subtle a hint that they're performing intercourse in a way. And she does consent to Bateau warns her not to do this, and she wants to. She's curious. She's kind of into it in terms of wanting to meet this entity and figure out what's going on. But he kind of takes her over right now, and I don't know if it was clear that she knew that or not, but I think this is sort of Oshii implying essentially that he's kind of raping her in a way, and she's like paralyzed. She can't do anything about it, and he proposes to her here that they want to merge, and he explains that that's the last real thing that he needs to do is reproduce and die to become truly a living thing, and then if he does that with her, then their offspring will be truly a living thing. She doesn't really say okay, and she doesn't really she's curious, she wants to know, but she's not like, Bateau, get me out of here. She's sort of overwhelmed and just kind of gets taken along for that ride, and then it's too late. But in the new movie, where they made the puppet master Kuze, essentially, they, archetypally in terms of writing, I thought that was much better because it actually gave some heart to the story, and them merging would have been perhaps a good thing and would have made her more of a superhero, or really the offspring more of a superhero for sequels. For this, if you think about it, what's really going on is that, he kind of takes her over. She doesn't really say, yes, let's do this. Let's have a cyber baby and die together. You could say maybe she's sort of been preparing for that, but that could have also been a psyop that he's sort of been like luring to start thinking about and unraveling her own identity. And it's, and I don't know if, you could even take this further and say, is this kind of the Wintermute Neuromancer merger? Is Kusanagi even a human at all? Or is she also is she just an AI? Or is she like maybe an emergent post AI? Because she was based on a human, but she kind of, all of that disappeared. And so, you could have, possibly, you could say that they may actually be equals and that they're merging here, or that he's co-opting her. And right there is how you know. And look at that. Like, he's really saying, like, this is not good, and that Bato's trying to save her, and he's stopped it, and I don't even know if she's aware of it. And here it happens. So really, what Oshii is saying here is that, and only after seeing the new movie and thinking about that and how that you emotionally wanted that to happen and it didn't, which is awful, but how it does happen here, I think what Oshii is saying is that this is kind of the rape of humanity to birth post-humanism. It's the end of humanity, essentially, right here. And Kusanagi dies here. And so really, this whole movie is actually a tragedy that Kusanagi, our hero, our heroine, she dies. She loses. She tracked down this, she was doing her job. She tracked this thing down, and it tricked her and trapped her into this. And she was, only because maybe it had been toying with her and starting to play mind games with her, that she was even mentally prepared to listen to anything he had to say and was even interested in that. But ultimately, kind of what happens here is he sort of like how a female praying mantis will, after mating with a male, she will then eat and kill the male. That's kind of the, what's going on here with Kusanagi. She, 2501 is co-opting her and sort of eating her and killing her to perpetuate to a new, or really to create a new post-human genuine intelligence cyber species, really sort of an alien. And here we go, and we even get sort of like angelic imagery and flowers or feathers and sort of angel type stuff coming at us that sort of suggests transcendence, which is how you could maybe misinterpret this as a positive thing, and maybe he's feeding that into her to trick her into this. But she's not really fully understanding, I think. Well, maybe she is, and maybe she's just going with it, that she is going to die now. Like, she is dying right now, and maybe that's what the angel is. It's taking Kusanagi away. The last bit of human, it's taking her ghost away. And 2501 just co-opted her and created the next iteration, and he died too. But what we see in the next scene is not Kusanagi, and it's not 2501, and she even literally says this. But make no mistake, Major loses in this story, and she's dead. And so, like the end of 2001, which is sort of an alchemical transmutation story, here we are waking up in not another megatech body that's an adult, but as this creepy, it's all framed and set up. Oshii is literally really trying to creep us out right now. He's showing us this creepy girl, and we all know that in Japanese films and horror games, there's nothing better than a creepy black-haired little girl, right? So, and her eyes they remind me so much of the Star Child from 2001. So I think there's a lot going on here with that. And look at that. I mean, that is That is not a pleasant image of post-humanism. At the very least, Oshii is saying this is creepy as hell. And sort of in the exact same way that Kubrick sort of creeps us out with The Star Child, in 2001. But ironically, that was supposed to be a positive thing. I guess it was supposed to be such a mind-shattering moment that he picked something he wanted to convey something that would be unsettling because it's sort of alien. It's not us, it's something else. But, in terms of where this is going, I mean, Kusanagi's dead. Our heroine that we've been following along, watching the pain of her sort of alienation, she loses, she dies. And it'd be one thing if, she's a mother. She's, at the end of this, she's become a mother, which, is like Ripley and Aliens especially. But, yeah, I mean, I think this whole movie, the whole tone of the movie, the alienation, the dystopia, the gray, it's not saying that this is good. That's my take. After watching this and comparing it and thinking about it, I wrote a 7,000 word critique of the new movie, which is on loremethod.com. And I even wrote a how it should have gone sort of summary rewrite of the movie, fixing some problems with it, some major problems, no pun intended. But yeah, I mean, look at those eyes. Those are glowing, ethereal, almost alien eyes. And she just says it right there. She's no longer Kusanagi, and she's no longer the puppet master. She's something new. And Bateau, I don't even think he really gets it. I think he's fallen in love with her, but we see him in the sequel that Oshii did as pretty much a lost puppy. And very reality confused, too. And then, the way he catches up with her and interacts with her, she's kind of weirdly alien, sort of beyond. beyond human in all regards. And this is it. I mean, this is really where it punctuates, where I think Oshii is saying this is all dystopia. I mean, look at that. She's like a demon child looking over that city where all of these humans are now obsolete beneath her, and sort of an opportunity for her. What can she accomplish? The fact that she's even in a body is sort of just, I think it's all to sort of put her in a child's body to sort of metaphorically convey she's the star child. She's the data child, as I say. But, yeah, I mean, really, she would and does end up spreading throughout the entire internet. And I think in the new movie, it was even more clever that she would also then spread into all humans connected to the network too. And so there it is. There's the 1995 Ghost in the Shell classic, and I think it's still hands down the best. It's the deepest, which is what Rupert Sanders considered to be its biggest flaw. I think it's the whole point of the movie. So there's that. But and that's sort of, that kind of reminds me too of the Wachowskis and how they said, why does a movie have, if it's going to be deep, why does it have to be super boring and lame? Why can't it be filled with amazing action? And The Matrix totally hit that nail on the head. And what a missed opportunity for Rupert Sanders and for Scarlett Johansson. It ended up being kind of a muddled mess. So if anything, though, see it, because it's, if you're a fan of Ghost in the Shell, it's eye candy. And read my rewrite on loremethod.com, because it'll set it right in your mind. It'll clear up a lot of cognitive dissonance that either the screenwriters or the editing or the filmmaker all put into it, with some minor changes, honestly, that really, really do a tremendous amount to fix it. And check out Neon Eclipse at loremethod.com. Also, check out my portfolio of graphic design and UI for the games industry at xanderdavis.com. And Friday, I'm going to head out and see Alien Covenant. And so probably what I'll do is, like this, I'll do a commentary on Prometheus with the context of, hey, I just also saw Alien Covenant. And so I'm hoping what happens is that sort of recolors my perspective of Prometheus, and we can get all into that too. So this has been the first of my film commentaries, and thanks a lot for watching it with me, and I really hope you enjoyed it. All right, guys, take care. See ya.